I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of your first word news. Hurricane Matthew is taking aim at the U.S. East Coast. At least 500,000 people in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas have been ordered to evacuate. The storm's track has it headed near Florida's Atlantic coast Thursday evening. The storm killed at least 11 people in the Caribbean. President Obama is praising the Paris Climate Change Accord, which was ratified by European Union lawmakers today. The agreement commits rich and poor countries to take action to curb the rise in global temperatures.
If we follow through on the commitments that this Paris Agreement embodies, history may well judge it as a turning point for our planet.
The accord takes effect in a month. Russia has suspended an agreement with the U.S. on research cooperation in nuclear and energy sectors. Moscow calls the move a countermeasure to U.S. sanctions imposed over Russia's role in the Ukraine conflict. On Monday, Moscow canceled an agreement with Washington on the disposal of weapons-grade plutonium. The Syrian government reportedly will reduce the number of airstrikes and artillery shelling inside Aleppo. The move could allow civilians to escape to safer zones. Meantime, the United Nations released satellite images from rebel-held parts of Aleppo showing damage believed to have been caused by airstrikes. I'm Mark Crumpton in New York. Bloomberg Technology is next.
And this is the newly named Bloomberg Technology. Tech is global, and so are we. We are pushing beyond Silicon Valley to bring you the stories around the world that matter most, from San Francisco to Shenzhen, Tel Aviv, London, and Berlin. And with that, we are excited to welcome you to Bloomberg Technology and say farewell to Bloomberg West. It's been a great run. Coming up, it has been 1 year since Jack Dorsey returned to the helm at Twitter. We'll take stock as the company's future hangs in the balance. Plus, he's one of Uber's biggest shareholders. Chris Sacca tells us what he thinks of the ride-hailer's prospects in an IPO. And a smoking Samsung smartphone causes Southwest Airlines to evacuate a plane. We'll dig into the details, including one report that the faulty handset may have been a brand new replacement. But first, to our lead. It is 1 year since Jack Dorsey came back to Twitter as CEO, and it's been a rough one. Twitter shares are nearly 12% below where they were a year ago, as investors fear Jack Dorsey may not deliver on the turnaround he needs. Meantime, talk of a sale officially on the table, with bids potentially rolling in within the next couple of weeks. Salesforce, Disney, and Google have all been cited as interested buyers, but a disagreement may be brewing between Jack Dorsey and the rest of the board as to what is best for the company.
We're in a strong position right now, I think, and as a board member, we have to consider the right options.
We've always had a lot of speculation around what Twitter could become and where Twitter would go. But we have a really strong plan ahead of us, and it's something that we're focused on executing.
But I think Twitter can be a successful, independent company. I've also said that I think the world of the team over there. I think Jack thinks beautifully and elegantly and clearly about product direction. And, Anthony and Adam and Vijay and the rest of the senior leadership team over there are tremendous. So I don't think that's the only possible outcome. And, I think there are lots of different ways that Twitter can be successful.
I hope for an acquisition. I think there are some great product teams that this fits in with naturally. And that's not a new thing for me. I've been saying this for a long time. I think it is a natural complement to at least 4 or 5 companies.
The many faces and voices of Twitter there, for many former CEOs, co-founders. Chris Sacca, of course, longtime Twitter investor. Joining me now to discuss our Bloomberg Tech reporter, Sarah Fryer, who covers Twitter, Monas Crespi-Hart analyst James Chakmak, and my guest host for the hour, David Kirkpatrick, CEO of Techonomy. Sarah, I'll start with you. You've got some new reporting out that Jack Dorsey may be losing control of the company, that there are dissenting voices within the company about what to do to sell or not to sell, and about strategy in general. Explain.
Certainly, as you mentioned, there's disagreement between co-founders Jack Dorsey and Ev Williams about whether a sale is the best thing for Twitter. Jack wishes he had more time to prove out the live video strategy that Twitter's been trying. Now, that strategy, you talked about internal conflicts. I wouldn't call it a conflict so much as a cede of power to Anthony Noto, the CTO of Twitter, who has been able to sort of put the company on this live streaming path. He made the NFL deal. He's made a lot of these other streaming deals, and that's really caused the product strategy to follow. And Jack is just letting him kind of set the road.
You've heard from a number of sources that Noto has become really the cheerleader within the company, moral support, but also leading the live strategy there. James, we're expecting bids to roll in over the next couple of weeks. Disney, you believe, is the best bet. Why?
Sure. I think what Disney needs to do is figure out, how am I going to be distributing my content when people are no longer subscribing to cable bundles? And what Twitter does is provide a platform to distribute that content while also enabling a system where we do think that Twitter could remain at an arm's length and remain independent to do deals with other competing content providers. This news today on Salesforce, I'm still scratching my head on because why would Salesforce want to buy this? Yes, I get the argument about the marketing cloud, fine, about leveraging their customer service relationship and management software, fine. But at the end of the day, I think that this is more about Mark Benioff's ambition to get to $10 billion. I get the fact that this is a data, and this is the way I would think about Twitter. You are acquiring data and distribution, and that's why I just don't think that the news today on the Salesforce really jibes. We think that Disney makes the most sense.
I understand you also think that Google is a less likely candidate, potentially because of antitrust issues. However, in speaking with Chris Sacca, the investor, yesterday, he seemed to think that Google was one of the best fits.
Oh, academically speaking, on paper, we think that Google makes an excellent choice, because they're already working together and, in leveraging the tweets and putting them into the search results. But ultimately, you have to think about Google's position not only here, but also abroad. And they're facing considerable amount of antitrust litigation and the issues in the EU, and you could see that surface here in the US as well. And if you're bringing on 300 million active social kind of members onto the Google platform and how it looks against the Facebook per se, we think that could potentially raise some issues where it makes another acquirer like a Disney more feasible.
Chris Sacca, by the way, who's been a longtime shareholder, he did tell me yesterday he has sold a number of his shares, though he still owns a lot of Twitter shares. He's also been a huge cheerleader for the company and also had this to say. Take a listen.
It's just an incredible story of underachievement, of potential that was never realized. And so I'd be really excited for someone with some product vision to go in there and take some chances. We know that it's got the most valuable corpus of data, the most valuable body of information in the world. There's stuff in there for every person on this planet that's interesting. They have just failed repeatedly to surface that in an easy to digest way.
David, weigh in on this.
Well, I think it's funny to call them an underachiever because, they really do punch way above their weight in terms of their social presence, their influence in the global dialogue. I think just their general visibility among tech companies. They're way smaller than all the tech companies they're always compared to, both in revenue, market cap, et cetera. And yet they really are seen as on a par with Facebook, and it's really weird. I also think it's very interesting to look at the fact that you've got companies as diverse as Google, Salesforce, and Disney all having legitimate reasons why they might want to buy it. It just goes to show what a kind of chameleon-like company Twitter is, and yet it really is something substantial. The big problem is it's just worth too much money. The shareholders now are the biggest believers in it, and the fact that they're not selling at $17 billion market cap, to me, is kind of crazy because the company doesn't seem to me anywhere near that valuable. So if somebody's going to pay that kind of money for it, they're taking a huge gamble. Now, I was talking to James earlier, and I think, the case can be made that Disney maybe could justify the expense more than almost anybody. So it's an interesting argument.
And, in speaking with Chris Sacca yesterday, Sarah, you heard him say as well that he doesn't think Twitter can get much more than the current market cap, that an acquisition is already priced in here. But let's give Jack Dorsey some credit for the things that people are saying he has done right. In fact, you've got some anecdotes in your reporting that say, he's responding to emails faster than anyone would expect anyone to respond, let alone a guy who has another job.
Right. And he has been able to define sort of what Twitter is a little bit more than his predecessors have, and calling it about live, about real time, about what's happening now.
Is it live or bust, though?
I think that's the point we're at now, right? He's gone a year without really moving the needle in those user numbers. Now we're at a point where they have this new strategy they're just putting to test. They need to show some progress on it. They need to show numbers, or else this roar for an acquisition is going to get louder and louder. Now, to be fair to Jack, when Dick Costolo was in the CEO seat, people were saying the same things. Why hasn't Dick moved the user numbers? It turns out that changing the CEO didn't really quite make a difference in that area. Will selling the company make a difference too? I don't know.
That CEO seat at the helm of Twitter has never been an easy place to be. Sarah Friar, I know you'll keep us posted on every step of the way, march toward acquisition or not. James Chakmak of Monness, Crespi and Hart, David Kirkpatrick, you are sticking with me, my guest host for the hour. Coming up, more of our exclusive interview with investor Chris Sacca, this time talking about Uber, why he's calling Uber's sale in China a win. Plus, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin takes a big step forward in his plan to blast wealthy tourists into space. We explain later this hour. This is Bloomberg. Lowercase Capital founder Chris Sacca has been outspoken on a number of topics, like the future of Twitter, the 2016 presidential election. He is also a big shareholder in Uber, once telling me that the ride-hailing company will be a winner in a winner-take-all market. I sat down with the venture capitalist at Dreamforce and asked him what he thought about Uber selling its China business to Didi. Take a listen.
I think the China thing ended up being a big win. Look, Travis, as we've talked about in the past, just is irrationally entrepreneurial sometimes. First city we launched was San Francisco. The second city we launched is New York, which is a punishingly difficult city to do business in, but he wanted to go there and prove we could do it. No matter how many low-hanging fruit cities there were, we're going to New York. One of the first 10 cities we launched is Paris. Like Paris, where they basically hate anyone who comes in with a new disruptive product that might upset the unions. I'm like, Travis, why are you flying to Paris?
But China's a huge market that they've obviously lost.
He was 2 years behind, and he went into a country where literally at the government level, they didn't want us to be there. Offices got raided in Hong Kong, cars were being seized. It is fascinating to me that he was able to pull off a 20% deal in what will now be the monopolist over there. I love it. I think it was a good outcome considering how far we were behind with a regime that hasn't let Google operate there, hasn't let Facebook operate there. It's really, really impossible to disrupt one of their incumbent businesses. So I'm thrilled. As a shareholder, I'm thrilled. The burn is way down. The road is clear to have a potential, and I don't know anything about any IPO plans. I think if Travis had it, we would never go public, but the road is clear because the finances look great now. And we get to sit back and ride a wave of success with the market leader in China.
So what are Uber's prospects in an IPO if it happens?
Unlimited at this point. I mean, they're making transportation as ubiquitous as water. You see them going down market to some of the, Uber Pool. Uber Pool represents more than 70% of the traffic in this city now. It's cheaper than not just a taxi, but then the bus. You've got some cities now where they're doing flat fee pricing where you basically pony up a couple bucks. You've got guaranteed pricing even during surge. In some markets now in LA, you can go literally Hollywood to Santa Monica on the flat fee pricing stuff. Uber Eats is just crushing the competitors, DoorDash and stuff. There's nothing to contain that company nor Travis as a founder.
So do we see more M&A in ride hailing? What happens to Lyft?
No, that's the thing. I don't think there's anything synergistic about Uber ever buying Lyft. That's the difference there, is I think Didi had to, they stared Travis down and realized this is a guy we could lose to. There's the potential. It's probably not the majority likelihood case, but it's a real odd, and so let's negotiate a deal. Travis doesn't look at Lyft and see that at all. There's no reason to. Lyft is right now, they promised their investors last year they would only lose $600 million in the domestic market. They're not even operating any of these bigger, more expensive international markets. It's a brutal case for them. I don't think they survive this in their current form. They get rolled up into an auto manufacturer. They tried to do that and everybody passed. I don't think there's good news ahead for Lyft investors.
Lowercase Capital Managing Director and Founder Chris Sacca there at Dreamforce. I want to bring back my co-host for the hour, Techonomy CEO David Kirkpatrick. And obviously it's in Chris Sacca's interest to say great things about Uber, David. But did what he say resonate with you?
Well, he's fascinating to listen to. And I think some of the things he says make a lot of sense. I think he's absolutely right. A brilliant exit from China in a market that they really had no shot at. And the fact that they got what they did from Didi is amazing.
That's very different, though, than saying they're a winner in a winner-take-all market.
Well,
if Didi is going to be the winner in China, that is a huge market, and that is not a winner-taking-all. That's a couple of winners, potentially.
That was my next point. I think Chris is a real cheerleader, and I don't think it's a winner-take-all market. I think that, yes, Travis Kalanick may be irrationally entrepreneurial, but this is not an easy business to dominate in. And the idea that they're making transportation like water, great line, but I don't even know what that means. I mean, transportation is all around us. We have legs. I mean, but I do think Uber is an amazing company. But do you think about what he's saying about how cheap it is to do these Uber pools and get from Santa Monica to Pasadena or whatever? Who are the people who are doing that? The drivers who aren't making very much money that the company depends on. I think one of the big Achilles heels of Uber is they don't treat their drivers well enough. And every time I get into either an Uber or a Lyft, and it's often the same drivers, they always say they prefer driving for Lyft or other companies, but never Uber. So I think that's a problem. They're not going to get self-driving cars soon enough not to have to rely on drivers. And I think that's a weak point in their business model.
Then, of course, there are what customers have to say about these companies. David Kirkpatrick, Techonomy CEO, my guest host for the hour. You are sticking with me. Still to come, Samsung's Note 7 crisis could be on the verge of getting a lot worse. Details of a new smoking smartphone next. This is Bloomberg. In this edition of Out of This World, a big step forward for Jeff Bezos' space company, Blue Origin, in its plan to send tourists into suborbital space. The company completed its most rigorous test yet of an escape system that would shoot passengers out and away from the rocket in the event of a problem. The New Shepard rocket blasted off from a test site in Texas this morning. Then 45 seconds later, parachutes deployed and slowly descended to Earth. Blue Origin aims to send crews into space next year and expects to sell seats to tourists in 2018 for between $250,000 and $350,000 a pop. Turning now to Samsung, today, Southwest Airlines said that one of the company's smartphones started to smoke and forced the evacuation of a plane waiting to depart from Louisville. This just 3 weeks after U.S. safety regulators announced an official recall of the Galaxy Note 7 on complaints of overheating and catching fire. Now, The Verge is reporting that the phone involved in this most recent incident was actually one of the replacement phones that Samsung just sent out after the recall. Samsung is staying tight-lipped for now, saying in a statement, "Until we are able to retrieve the device, we cannot confirm that this incident involves the new Note 7. We're working with authorities and Southwest now to confirm the cause." Still with us in New York, Techonomy CEO David Kirkpatrick, and with me here in the studio, our consumer tech reporter Mark Gurman. So what do we know? What do we not know? What's the latest?
We know that the family aboard that Southwest plane with the replacement Note 7 is saying that it was a replacement Note 7, and they sent The Verge a photo of the box with a little black square on the code labeling, which indicates that it's a replacement device. It's a very common practice. Apple even did it. They have a green sticker on some of their chargers post recall for those devices. But you know, Emily, I thought we were past this. I thought we were done talking about these phones. I thought we were going to move on to a new topic, but this just keeps coming up and coming up for Samsung, and it's already getting out of hand. They claim they solved the issue. They didn't solve the issue. Clearly, there's a problem here. And it's also, interesting to me that if The Verge can figure out that this was a replacement device, if the family is saying this is a replacement device, how come Samsung can't come out and say it's a replacement device? Are they embarrassed? I mean, do they think this person is making it up? How long does it take to get their hands on the device? How long does it take to get pictures of the device?
Well, of course, they're saying they legitimately don't know yet. On the other hand, they're fielding, activist investor issues where a company called Elliott Management is saying that Samsung should be splitting in two, relisting its core business on the NASDAQ. This isn't something that has never been proposed before, but this is obviously a huge company. There are a lot of different departments within this company, and now that they're going through these issues, one wonders if perhaps they should be more focused.
Honestly, maybe they should be more focused, but I don't think that splitting the company in two is going to solve the problem. The problem here, and our colleagues, part of Bloomberg Technology in Asia, wrote an amazing story detailing that in the rush to beat the iPhone 7, they really didn't put in the amount of testing they should have in these battery components and sourcing out of the supply chain. So that's not related to having to split the company in two or not. They need to refocus the management within the company. They need to change their procedures. And I think some weight on this even should go onto the carriers. Obviously, these wireless carriers are very trusting of their partners like Apple and Samsung. But when people buy an iPhone, it's not only an Apple iPhone, but let's say you buy it from the Verizon store, it's the Verizon iPhone. People called the first CDMA iPhone a Verizon iPhone. So these carriers are part of the marketing behind it. They have their brands at stake. So I think that carriers themselves, they need to put more attention into testing here, just like a company is going to vet someone they hire before they hire them.
That's an interesting point. David, Samsung is obviously in a vulnerable position right now, and you have investors trying to take advantage of that. But just how vulnerable would you say this position actually is?
I would say very, very vulnerable. If this proves to be true, and I think we have to basically assume it's not a dirty trick by Apple or Elliott management to kind of make Samsung's situation look even worse, it would be a great thing for them to pull off if they could, because nothing could make the company look worse. But here's a company that's a very opaque, family-controlled Korean company that really does not have what we would consider modern governance. And I do think that Elliott's management's arguments are interesting, that they really need to put in place much more contemporary controls and governance methodologies, because they're proving themselves to be incapable of running the company properly. They seem to have rushed as much in the replacement as they rushed, as Mark just explained, in producing the 7 in the first place. So these people are really, really screwing up, and something's got to change at that company. And I think it's terrible.
I'm sure we'll be learning something shortly. Mark, you will keep us updated. Mark Gurman, our consumer tech reporter. David Kirkpatrick, my guest host for the hour. You are sticking with me. Coming up, AT&T's acquisition path is taking a page from another telecommunications giant. Why the company is looking to Hollywood next. And a reminder, Bloomberg West is now Bloomberg Technology. Check out our newly redesigned website covering all the latest developments in global tech from Bloomberg's 12 international bureaus. We're at Bloomberg.com/technology, on Twitter @technology. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with First Word News. The United Nations Security Council has selected the person it wants to succeed Ban Ki-moon as leader of the world body.
Today, after our 6th straw poll, we have a clear favorite, and his name is Antonio Guterres. And we have decided to go for a formal vote tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and we hope it can be done by acclamation. This is what we are looking at.
Guterres is the former Prime Minister of Portugal. He previously served as UN High Commissioner for Refugees. The General Assembly must approve today's Security Council vote. Leaders from nearly 70 nations have pledged more than $15 billion in aid to Afghanistan over the next 4 years. The aid comes at a critical point in the country's battle against the Taliban. The federal prosecutor's office in Brussels says today's stabbings of 2 police officers were terror-related. The officers' wounds weren't life-threatening. Last month, there was another knife attack on 2 Brussels officers. They were wearing bulletproof vests and suffered only bruises. Prime Minister Theresa May's government has ruled out paying contributions to the EU budget to allow British companies access to the single market. The spokesman also says there will be no compromise on immigration, lawmaking, and freedom from the jurisdiction of European judges. Goldman Sachs' retirement plan is pulling about $300 million from Leon Cooperman's Omega Advisors. It's the second time this year it's cutting ties with a famous alum. The bank informed employees of that decision in a memo today. That's according to a person with knowledge of the situation. I'm Mark Crumpton. It's just after 6:30 p.m. Wednesday here in New York, 8:30 Thursday morning in Sydney. Paul Allen has a look at the markets. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. The market's not doing so well in New Zealand at the moment, off 0.4% after the first 90 minutes of Thursday trade, and that's despite a pretty good lead from Wall Street overnight. Nikkei futures, however, are looking positive, and it'll be worth keeping a watch on 7 & I, Japan's largest convenience store operator. They're out with earnings later today. Weak sales growth has seen guidance slashed, so we'll be looking for any sort of a plan from 7 & I going forward. Locally, ASX futures look set for gains of about 0.5% at the open in about 30 minutes' time. Today is the final day of the parliamentary hearings into the banking sector. We're going to be hearing from National Australia Bank and Westpac. Also out today, trade data for August in Australia. We're expecting a slight improvement to the deficit of $2.3 billion. I'm Paul Allen in Sydney. More of Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. AT&T is now on a new acquisition path, focusing on media companies. According to people familiar with the matter, that all started with the purchase of DirecTV last year. They say in the next 3 to 5 years, AT&T will go after deals to become a producer of programming. They also say the company will shift its model so it owns some of the video it distributes. Still with us to discuss, David Kirkpatrick, Techonomy CEO and our Bloomberg contributing editor, as well as Jerry Smith of Bloomberg News, our media reporter. So, Jerry, explain what we know. AT&T supposedly has a list of targets ranging from $2 billion to $50 billion in market cap.
Yeah, what we know is that AT&T is very interested in getting a piece of Hollywood. Their CEO has a list of potential media companies that he could acquire. And, it's really, if you look at AT&T, this is a company, they just bought DirecTV. Their business has really been about, distributing content to people either through their TV or through their phone. And now they actually want to create the content and own the programming that they're distributing.
So the phrase content is king is what we all hear, but this is a very costly business. Can AT&T do this profitably?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a question. There's a lot of risks to taking this path. I mean, you think about AT&T, it's sort of seen as this old stodgy phone company in a lot of ways, and now they're looking to get into the entertainment business, Hollywood. I mean, there's a potential for a real culture clash there. But if you look at a company like Comcast, which AT&T seems to be sort of taking a page from Comcast, they bought NBC Universal, they got a Hollywood studio, they got cable networks out of that. Really if you look at AT&T or Comcast, I mean, this is a hedge against the distribution business in some ways by creating the content. There's also a lot of things that they can learn from their viewers that they might not have access to as a distributor.
I wonder, though, David, is it taking a page from Comcast or stealing a page from Verizon?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Obviously, Verizon is trying to buy Yahoo. We'll see where that goes, but they already own AOL. It's basically a content company of the sort of newer breed. I think it's very risky, and I think Jerry's right to use the word culture, because I don't think these companies have the culture necessarily to get into such a very different business. But when I look at these companies and I hear people from Verizon and AT&T talk about it, you get a very clear sense that they look at the Googles and the Facebooks in particular, those two companies, and they say, wait a minute, how come they're so powerful? How come they have so much market cap? We have all these mobile users and mobile is it, and they have their mobile strategy, and that's what makes them so valuable. But we have 100 million or whatever mobile users. We should be that valuable too. And I think they spend an awful lot of time wringing their hands and thinking of strategies to make themselves more like those companies. But there are way bigger reasons even than culture. They're just not tech companies in the same way, even if they are built on technology in some sort of flat-footed way. So I think it's going to be hard to see them really succeed at the bigger ambition, which is more than just, buying a Hollywood studio and having power that's comparable to those companies they envy so much.
Jerry, how would you compare AT&T's strategy to what Verizon has also started to do? Obviously, Verizon bidding for Yahoo, Verizon producing its own original content.
Yeah, I mean, Verizon, certainly they bought AOL, they bought Yahoo. Really at the core of Verizon's strategy is mobile advertising. I mean, they want to be able to deliver, online video, through AOL and Yahoo to your phone, and they want to make it really easy for advertisers to reach you through your phone. AT&T's strategy is still sort of taking shape. One thing that is worth pointing out with AT&T, like Comcast, one of their biggest expenses is programming costs. TV networks are really trying to charge more, higher and higher rates for AT&T to carry their cable channels. And so now, if AT&T suddenly has the ability to create its own programming, which is expensive, but it also would potentially make it easier for them and limit the costs of having to carry cable networks.
David, it's interesting to think about what the carriers actually look like, let's say 5-10 years from now. The business has remained largely the same for the last couple of decades. And then, of course, the wireless wars have changed a lot. You see T-Mobile just trying to win subscribers in a legacy business, though doing things creatively. I wonder, what do you think these carriers really look like a decade from now?
Well, there's so many wild cards in trying to answer that question. Google was trying to get into the broadband business. They seem to be pulling away from that, and yet they're going into these branded phones, and who knows where they'll really take that and whether they might build networks to try to go behind their own phones. I think this whole industry is in such turmoil. One of the things that I was thinking about is, as I'm sitting here, is how the whole distribution methodology of content is shifting so rapidly. Disney might want Twitter because it wants to control a distribution path that would be a hedge against its cable channels becoming less important if people cut the cord with their cable systems. Meanwhile, Amazon, which has a completely novel form of distribution in the form of its Prime customers, is becoming a massive producer of video. They're actually shooting a movie in the East Village near where I live. They had an entire street blocked off and full of classic cars last night. It was kind of an amazing vision. But, they're spending tons of money on content. So, the players are shifting really quickly, and we got to remember Amazon's as much in this as everybody else, and each one has a different way they think they're going to assemble a whole sort of ecosystem.
All right, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor, CEO of Techonomy, as well as our media reporter, Jerry Smith. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us. David, you're sticking with me. A story we are watching. The FBI has arrested a U.S. contractor for allegedly stealing classified government documents. The Justice Department unsealed a criminal complaint Wednesday that said the stolen information could cause, quote, exceptionally grave damage to national security if released. According to a person familiar with the matter, the contractor is Harold Martin of Maryland. He was arrested on August 27th. Martin worked for the consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton and was assigned to the NSA. That is, of course, the same employer of whistleblower Edward Snowden, who took and released thousands of classified files from the NSA in 2013. The investigation into this latest leak occurred around the same time that sophisticated hacking tools apparently used by the NSA were leaked online. Shares of Booz Allen plunged on the disclosure. The firm said it has fired the employee in question. Coming up, as more players jump into the virtual reality race, we'll look ahead to PlayStation releasing its long-awaited headset and get the latest on Google's Daydream View. And do not forget to tune in this weekend. We'll bring you all the best interviews from the week, including our conversation with serial entrepreneur Mark Cuban from Dreamforce. That's Saturday on Bloomberg Television. This is Bloomberg. A story we are following: Yahoo is disputing a report that it built software to scan customers' emails for U.S. intelligence agencies. Reuters had said Yahoo complied with government orders to scan hundreds of millions of Yahoo Mail accounts on behalf of the NSA or FBI. In a statement, Yahoo said, "We narrowly interpret every government request for user data to minimize disclosure. The mail scanning described in the article doesn't exist on our systems." Yahoo is under increasing scrutiny ahead of its planned acquisition by Verizon. Last month, the company disclosed a hack that exposed 500 million customer accounts. The VR race is upon us. PlayStation's virtual reality headset is gearing up to launch next week alongside a fresh lineup of VR games. The upcoming rollout comes on the heels of the releases of Oculus Rift and HTC Vive earlier this year. Google is also joining in, unveiling its Daydream View earlier this week. With the holiday season quickly approaching, which VR headset will reign supreme? Joining me now are Bloomberg Intelligence's Jitendra Wawal, who's experimented with every VR headset on the planet, as well as my co-host for the hour, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor. So, Jitendra, on the one hand, when you look at Sony, you could say they're a little late to the game, though the game just started. On the other hand, they've already got this giant network of consoles that already exist. So does that give them an edge? What do you think?
Absolutely. So 40 million plus PlayStation 4 is already out there. If you look at the monthly active users on the network, 65 million. And let's not forget the content strength that Sony has. Their in-house studios are very strong. They have extreme fan following over, last couple of years, and they can sort of leverage those things and upsell these devices. But if you look at the expectations, they're not that high with respect to what their upselling capabilities right now.
What about the price? The PlayStation is a bit cheaper. Though you already have to have the consoles, though the HTC and the Oculus fairly expensive because you need the entire PC to go with it. Google Daydream, on the other hand, very cheap, but we don't know how that'll translate into the experience. How do you see this playing out when it comes to price?
So Google Daydream is targeting another set of customers, more casual, easy to use. The price points are much lower. Again, unit volumes would be higher in that thing. If you just look at expectations, about 7.1 million expected this year, Daydream-like products. But as far as HTC, Sony, and Vive are concerned, Sony, price is not just the main factor over here. Main factor is ease of use, single device that game developers can sort of like develop for and optimize that experience. And again, Sony could use its in-house studios much better than anybody else.
David, what's your take on the nascent, thus far, VR wars?
I think it is very nascent. I think this is one of those technologies that we're starting to realize is absolutely going to be a major part of the landscape going forward. I think consumer electronics companies like Sony see it as a real opportunity to kind of leap back into relevance. And probably over time, Sony in particular, I think will do very well with it. But it's not, in my opinion, even though, yes, it's a great Christmas present for your 13-year-old or maybe even your 21-year-old, but it's not going to be a product category with content that's really going to appeal to a wide range of people and be a mass market product like a smartphone kind of level cultural penetration anytime soon. That's not to say it's not important. It's very important.
Now, the Oculus Developers Conference is happening right now in San Jose, just about an hour away from where we are, and Mark Zuckerberg has just put out a post saying they will demonstrate something new at 10 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow, Thursday. Any idea, Jitendra, what this could be?
Like David said, content is key over here, and there might be some content-related announcements over there. The mainstream adoption issue is definitely, it's longer term, like we had estimated before. Around the 2020 timeframe is when all the ecosystem around this new product type will evolve. But right now, the focus is mostly on gamers.
And what about content? Who can compete the best when it comes to content?
Well, even if you have the content delivery platforms are not there yet. Streaming, this much bandwidth, the requirements, the experience, it won't be ready. So it'll be just pilot stage, nascent, just pitch the idea to consumer, like, look out for these products. The products will evolve, and hopefully, the bandwidth will solve itself longer term, and this thing will reach mainstream.
David, you wrote the book on Facebook. Any idea what surprise Mark Zuckerberg could have in store tomorrow?
No, but it's been very interesting to me to see how excited he has become about Oculus. I mean, obviously excited enough to spend billions to buy the company in the first place, but he really believes that it's not just for gamers, and that down the road, our interaction with our friends on Facebook is going to be in a virtual space where we probably feel in some very convincing way that we are with each other despite distance. And that is very cool. I'm very interested that he thinks that so passionately, and I want to watch that very carefully. I'll be paying close attention tomorrow.
All right, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor. You were sticking with me. Bloomberg Intelligence's Jitendra Rawal, our VR in-house expert. Thank you for stopping by. Tomorrow on Bloomberg Tech, our global coverage continues. We'll be joined by Xiaomi VP of Global Operations, Hugo Barra, plus Sling TV CEO Roger Lynch. Plus, Amazon and Google have been investing a lot of money in drone delivery. So how'd they get beat to the punch by a small startup in Reno, Nevada? That is next. The commercial drone market in the U.S. is projected to top $1 billion by 2022, and everybody is fighting for a piece of the pie. One interesting segment of that is delivery drones. Giants like UPS and Amazon are investing heavily in technology, but they may be beaten to the punch by a small startup based near Reno, Nevada. Bloomberg Technology's Spencer Sopfer went out there to investigate.
There's already more than 500,000 drones that have been registered in the US. There's nothing quite like a flying robot delivering a package into your hands within minutes of placing an order. That is a magical experience.
That magical experience isn't as far away as you might think. Flirty is the first company to get government approval to make deliveries by drone, beating out Amazon and Google.
DZ, IP, are you ready to go?
Yes, good to
go. Okay, we are clear and ready for you to deliver.
We're in the desert outside of Reno, Nevada, at a secret site where this small startup regularly tests its delivery drones.
And what is the scenario we're thinking about today? Tell us about that, what the customer application of this would be.
So the customer application is simple. You open your smartphone, you push a button in order to order over-the-counter medicine. We load up a package, they take off vertically, they fly based on predefined GPS coordinates to the customer's home location or smartphone location. And then when the customer's ready to receive the delivery, the drone hovers at about 50 feet, which is above trees, above buildings, and above power line. So it was at 100 feet, it paused, and now it's coming down to 45 feet to hover and lower the package to us. We've designed custom packaging to ensure that cold food stays cold, hot food stays hot, and delicate foods stay unbroken. So Spencer, another Flirty drone delivery?
Chili dog here, pink bismuth here.
Exactly. Okay. We then fly back and land autonomously where we took off from, reload the drone and conduct that delivery again.
All the testing in the desert is paying off. Flirty drones are already delivering Domino's Pizza in New Zealand, and in July, Flirty teamed up with 7-Eleven to make the first drone delivery of over-the-counter medicine to a customer's home in the United States.
When we're operating in a neighborhood near you, we'll be able to deliver to you within 10 minutes of you placing an order. We've designed and built our drones to carry up to 5.5 pounds for up to 10 miles. They're hexacopters powered by lithium polymer batteries, so they're electrically powered green aircraft.
Right now, Flirty is beating the tech Goliaths in drone delivery. The next step is turning that head start into profit. To do that, Matt Sweeney will have to convince a lot of shoppers that a magical experience of a box dropped from the sky is worth a premium delivery fee.
Why does society need drone delivery? If you're hungry, would you want your pizza delivered by drone or by cars during peak hour traffic? And if your kids are sick, would you want the over-the-counter medicine delivered from 7-Eleven within 10 minutes by Flirty? Or would you prefer load your kids into a car at night and take them down into the store? And within several years, drone delivery will be as common as seeing a truck delivering packages on the street today.
Bloomberg's Spencer Soper reporting there, and with us for a few final thoughts, my guest host, David Kirkpatrick. It's certainly exciting, David, to think about, but I keep asking myself, how soon will this actually happen? Your thoughts?
I don't think it'll really happen very soon. I love the company's named Flirty. They clearly have a very well-spoken CEO. But, you know, the big problem with that, if all of us were to start doing that, is the software and systems to allow drones to be flying all over in all kinds of different directions and not hitting each other, not falling on our heads. We're nowhere near that, but just like VR and AR, it's super cool. Maybe not like for the masses happening tomorrow.
All right, David Kirkpatrick, Techonomy CEO and our Bloomberg contributing editor. Thank you, as always, David, for joining us
on
for
Bloomberg
this show.
Technology.
Thank you. Our very first show of a new chapter. Now to a story that is trending. Netflix is one step closer to having its original movies shown on the big screen. According to the Wall Street Journal, the streaming service has signed a deal with a small luxury theater company called iPic Entertainment. The deal covers the same-day release of 10 of Netflix's upcoming movies. This is the first long-term deal Netflix has signed with a theater chain. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Check out our new website for everything you need to know from around the world in tech, powered by our 12 international bureaus. We are at Bloomberg.com/technology. That is all for now from San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.